The first thing I felt was the barrel-cold steel pressed against the pulse in my neck. Then came the smell, the familiar stench of whiskey and old grief, the scent of my father's ghost. "You think you can walk into my house wearing that uniform and act like you're somebody?" Marjorie hissed her words, dripping acid. Her voice used to make me freeze when I was 12. Now, at 30, it still had the same effect. My back hit the kitchen wall. Her manicured hand trembled not from fear, but from rage, barely caged. I could see my reflection in her pupils, wide terrified, a soldier reduced to a target. "Put the gun down," I whispered. "You don't want to do this." She smiled, slow and sharp. "Oh, but I do. Your daddy left this for me. His gun, his house, his money. And all you brought me is that mouth." I could taste blood before she even fired. My cheek burned where the barrel kissed skin. The shot cracked through the air like thunder in a coffin. I hit the tile hard, the impact driving breath from my lungs. The pain was immediate, white-hot, blinding. My shoulder was a fountain of heat spilling across my uniform. The world tilted sideways. Somewhere above me, glass shattered. Somewhere else, she laughed. "You see what you made me do?" Her voice floated through the smoke. "You always push. You always ruin everything." I tried to move, but my left arm was useless. My right hand slipped in the blood pooling beneath me. She crouched beside me, her heels clicking on the floor like a metronome of madness. "You think anyone will believe you? You're the crazy one. You've always been the broken little soldier girl." She shoved my head against the floor. My ears rang. Her perfume, sweet rot and powder filled my nose until I wanted to choke. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't waste the air. "You're going to tell them you attacked me?" She continued, her tone calm, now practiced. "You were unstable, drunk, angry. That's the story." She touched the barrel to my wound, and I gasped so hard the room flickered. "That's right," she whispered. "Cry for me." She stood, stepping over me, her shadow slicing across my face. I heard the faint click of her phone camera. "Gotta have proof," she muttered. "For the cops." She took photos my blood, my face the mess she made. Every click was a nail in the coffin she was building for me. That's when something inside me snapped. It wasn't fear anymore. It was a strange, razor-cold clarity. I saw the drawer behind her, my father's hunting knife, the one he taught me to sharpen as a kid. My left hand twitched toward it, but the pain dragged me back. I had one weapon left, my training. Marjorie turned, dialing 911. "On nothing. Help." She sobbed. My stepdaughter went crazy. Her performance was perfect. But while she was busy playing victim, I slid my good arm beneath me and dragged my body toward the door. Every inch felt like tearing through fire. She didn't notice. She was too busy lying. "Please, she's dangerous." I had to defend myself. Her words blurred with the sound of my heartbeat. When my fingers brushed the doorknob, she turned. "Where do you think you're going?" she screamed, dropping the phone. I didn't answer. I kicked the door open with everything I had left. Night air rushed in, cold and alive. "You're not walking away from me, Claire!" she shrieked. Another shot rang out, tearing through the frame as I stumbled into the dark. The bullet missed, this time. My vision tunneled, but I kept running, one thought pounding through my skull. She thought she ended me. She just started a war. The humid night swallowed me whole. My breath came in ragged bursts, each one tasting of copper and fear. The wound in my shoulder pulsed like a living thing, the blood seeping through the torn sleeve of my uniform slick against my skin. The gravel of the old driveway cut into my knees as I crawled behind my father's rusted pickup. I pressed my back against the cool metal, trying to stay conscious, trying not to let the world blur. The house glowed behind me, that same kitchen window where my childhood had died years ago, now lit like a crime scene. I could hear her inside, Marjorie sobbing, performing lying. "Yes, officer," she came after me. "She said she wanted to kill me. I had no choice." Her voice cracked at all the right moments. She'd done this before I realized, not with a gun, but with words. She had been rehearsing this story my entire life. My head pounded. The gunshot still echoed in my bones. I wanted to scream to tell the night that I wasn't crazy, but sound felt dangerous. Every breath had to be a whisper if I wanted to live. I reached for my phone, but it was gone, must have fallen somewhere in that kitchen. My fingers brushed against my dog tags instead, and I clutched them tight. Dad's initials were engraved on the back. A sick joke, since his gun was what had just torn through me. I pressed the tags to my lips and forced myself to stand. The pain nearly blacked me out. My boots slipped on wet earth, but I didn't stop. If she had called the police, they'd already be on their way. And if she told them I attacked her, I'd be the one cuffed in the ambulance. I had to disappear before their sirens found me. The street was empty silent except for the hiss of crickets. I followed the narrow path that led toward the marsh, my childhood escape route. I used to sneak there to cry after she'd scream about how I'd ruined her life. Back then, the marsh was my hiding place. Tonight, it was my battlefield. The trees swallowed the light as I staggered through the brush. My vision dimmed, every heartbeat hammering against the wound. The sound of a car engine made me freeze. Headlights flashed through the trees. For one frozen second, I thought it was the police. Then I heard her voice again, carried on the night air. "Find her!" Marjorie shouted. "She's bleeding. She can't have gone far." My stomach turned cold. She'd called someone, not the police. Her brother, maybe. The man she always whispered to on the phone. I could hear him yelling something about finishing it. I stumbled deeper into the dark, my boots splashing through shallow water. The marsh mud sucked at my feet, trying to pull me down. My breath came faster. Panic clawed at my ribs, but training took over one step. One breath, keep moving. My shoulder throbbed with every heartbeat, but I pressed on until I saw the faint orange glow of a street lamp through the trees. Civilization. Safety. Maybe. I emerged onto an empty street lined with abandoned houses, the kind that looked like they'd been forgotten by time. My vision blurred again, the edges going black. I needed help, but if I called out, they'd find me first. That's when I saw movement near the old bus stop. A figure. Tall, still standing under the light. A man. My first thought was danger. My second was hope. I forced my legs to move the world, tilting sideways as I stumbled toward him. The night air rang with Marjorie's voice, echoing faintly in the distance, but I barely heard it. All I could see was that stranger's silhouette. And as I took one final step before my knees gave out, I whispered, the only thing I could manage, "Help me." Then the darkness finally won. The next thing I felt was warmth, steady human warmth pressing against my freezing skin. When my eyes fluttered open, the world was smeared and gray. I was lying on a bench under the flickering light of a street lamp. A man knelt beside me, his hands hovering near my wound, but not touching, as if afraid to make it worse. His clothes were neat pressed khakis and a dark jacket out of place in this forgotten street. His eyes, when they met mine, were a clear gray, calm but alert. I tried to speak, but only a rasp came out. "Please, help." He shook his head slightly, then pointed to his ear and mouth, mouthing a single word. "Deaf." My stomach dropped. The one person who'd stopped wasn't someone I could even talk to. He pulled out a small flashlight, checking my eyes with the precision of someone who'd done it before. His movements were efficient, deliberate military. He gestured toward my bleeding shoulder, then toward the phone in his pocket, raising his eyebrows in question. I nodded weakly. He began typing on it, then showed me the screen, hospital. I nodded again, but fear spiked through me. "Police," I whispered. "She called the police. They'll think I—" My voice broke into a sob. His brow furrowed as he read my lips. Then he typed again. "Bad people chasing you." I nodded, tears streaking my face. He looked around sharply, assessing the street like a battlefield. Then he typed one more line, his fingers quick and firm. "I'll protect you." He slid his phone into his pocket, then, without hesitation, pulled off his jacket and pressed it against my wound. I cried out, but his grip was steady, applying just enough pressure to stop the bleeding. He signed something with his free hand. Slow, deliberate shapes I vaguely recognized from childhood. Safe. Stay still. My cousin had been deaf. I knew just enough to understand. My mind screamed in confusion. Who was this man? Why did he move like a soldier and look like someone carrying the weight of command before I could process any of it? Headlights swept across the street. I froze. A dark SUV rolled slowly down the block windows, tinted engine growling. I recognized it instantly, Marjorie's brother's truck. No, I hissed. The man saw my panic and followed my gaze. His expression hardened. He motioned for silence, then crouched low, pulling me gently behind the bus stop bench. My breath came fast, shallow. The SUV slowed its beams, cutting through the darkness. I could hear the thud of footsteps, 2 men. One shouted, "Check the alley." The other kicked at trash cans, cursing under his breath. My rescuer didn't move. His eyes were locked on theirs, calm, calculating. When the sound of boots faded into the distance, he exhaled softly and turned back to me. His phone glowed again as he typed, "We move," quietly. I nodded, barely able to stand. He took my uninjured arm and lifted me with surprising strength. Every step sent fire through my shoulder, but I followed him into the maze of back streets. The night smelled of rain and rust, and somewhere in the distance, thunder rumbled. We walked until my legs gave out again, and he lowered me onto a park bench overlooking the river. The water below glimmered under the moonlight, black and endless. He typed something else and handed me the phone. "Name." I blinked, then forced the words out. "Claire." He smiled faintly, the first hint of emotion I'd seen, and typed one more word. "Robert." He sat beside me, scanning the darkness as if expecting an ambush. My body trembled uncontrollably now, the adrenaline fading, the pain roaring back. "You should go," I whispered. "She'll find me." He shook his head firmly. Then he pointed at his phone, typing once more before showing me the screen. "Not without you." I didn't understand why, but something in his gaze made me believe him. He wasn't just helping me out of pity. He was protecting me with a soldier's instinct. Another rumble of thunder rolled across the river, closer this time. My vision blurred, the world dissolving into shadow and sound. The last thing I saw before my body gave out again was Robert's face illuminated by his phone screen, his expression sharp and commanding. The kind of look that could quiet a room or lead men into battle. Then, merciful darkness. When I woke again, the world smelled of antiseptic and soft linen. Bright light burned through my eyelids, forcing me to squint. A rhythmic beeping pulsed beside me, steady, mechanical, alive. I was in a hospital bed wrapped in crisp white sheets, my left arm strapped to a sling. For a long moment, I didn't move. I was afraid that if I did, I'd still be on that kitchen floor staring up at Marjorie's gun. But then I heard it, a faint shuffle, the sound of shoes on tile. I turned my head and saw him, Robert. He sat near the foot of my bed, hands clasped, posture impossibly straight despite the fatigue etched across his face. His jacket hung neatly on the back of the chair. His eyes met mine, calm and searching. For a second, I thought maybe I'd imagined him. "You stayed," I croaked, my voice raw. He smiled faintly, then pulled out his phone. A message appeared on the screen. "You needed backup." I tried to laugh, but it came out as a sob. Tears blurred my vision before I could stop them. "The police," I whispered. Did she?" He shook his head quickly, typing again. "I handled it. Rest. Handled it." My mind spun. "How?" Before he could respond, the door opened. A nurse entered, brisk and efficient, her tone gentle. "Good morning, Sergeant Mitchell. You're safe now. The man who brought you in, Mr. Callahan, told us you'd been attacked." I blinked. Callahan. The name clanged somewhere deep in my memory, like a faint echo from the army world I'd left behind. The nurse adjusted my IV. "You lost a lot of blood, but the bullet passed clean through. You're lucky. Another inch and—" She stopped herself, smiled instead. "You should rest." When she left, I turned to Robert. "Callahan," I asked softly. He nodded, a shadow passing through his gray eyes. Then he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small leather notebook, flipping it open. The handwriting inside was clean and precise, the kind of penmanship that came from years of command. He wrote, "They think I'm retired. Let's keep it that way for now." He slid the notebook toward me. My pulse quickened. Retired from what I asked, though, a part of me already knew. Instead of answering, he pointed to my uniform folded neatly on a nearby chair. The army insignia glinted under the fluorescent lights. Then He signed, slow and deliberate. Same team. My throat tightened. For the first time since the shooting, I felt a flicker of something other than pain. Solidarity? Recognition. He typed again. She framed you. I've seen this before. We'll fix it. You don't even know me, I whispered. He gave a small smile. Don't need to. I know the enemy. His words hit me like a jolt. The way he said enemy didn't sound metaphorical. It sounded tactical, a threat that could be studied, tracked, neutralized. I leaned back, my heart racing. The police, did they believe her story? He hesitated, then wrote. They questioned, but I made a call. You're not under arrest. You made a call to who? He tore out a page, folded it, and tucked it into my palm. Rest. You'll understand soon. Then he stood, adjusted his collar, and left the room. I unfolded the note. In clean, unshaking handwriting, it read, They answer to me. My stomach turned cold. Who the hell was this man? The door swung shut behind him, leaving me alone with the humming machines. I stared at the note, my pulse thudding in my ears. Outside my window, the afternoon sun cut through the clouds, slicing a line of gold across the sterile walls. Somewhere in the distance, a police siren wailed. I closed my eyes and whispered, Marjorie, you picked the wrong soldier. By evening, I could move my arm again. The painkillers dulled the fire in my shoulder, but couldn't touch the storm building inside me. I stared at the folded note Robert had left. They answer to me. The words didn't make sense, but the authority behind them was undeniable. I'd seen that kind of confidence before commanders who didn't explain because they didn't need to. Still, questions clawed at me. Why would a stranger risk so much for me? Why did the hospital staff speak to him with the quiet respect reserved for someone above their pay grade? When he returned that night, the answers followed. He entered without knocking, his presence filling the small room like a silent order. He was wearing a different jacket, now civilian but pressed sharp, purposeful. In his hands, a stack of documents. I pushed myself upright, wincing. You said she framed me. He nodded, pulled out his phone, and typed news already spreading. She called reporters, claimed you attacked her. Police believe her for now. My stomach twisted. She's done this before, I whispered. She's built her whole life on lies. He watched me for a long moment, then typed again. Then we expose the truth. He handed me the papers. My breath caught when I saw what they were printed screenshots of social media posts. Headlines from local blogs already spreading her story. Local woman defends herself from violent stepdaughter, Army sergeant under investigation for assault. My name was everywhere. My picture from the hospital taken without my consent had already been uploaded. The comments underneath were worse than the headlines. Another unstable vet. PTSD psycho. Lock her up! I dropped the papers, my vision swimming. She's winning, I said, my voice breaking. Robert typed calmly. Not for long. Then he opened his notebook again, scribbled something, and handed it to me. She underestimated two things. You and me. You don't even know her, I said bitterly. She's poison. She doesn't stop until you're broken. His gaze didn't waver. He wrote one word, deliberate, final. Then we break her first. A chill ran through me. There was no anger in his face, just focus like a man drawing up a mission plan. He pulled his phone again and showed me an open email thread. At the top was a name I recognized from my time in the Army Major Isabella Ross JAG Corps, the Judge Advocate General's office. My breath hitched. You called the JAG? He nodded. We're not fighting in her court. We fight in mine. My body tensed. You're not just some retired officer, are you? He didn't answer, but he didn't need to. The way he stood, the way he looked at the door before he left, it wasn't habit. It was discipline. Control. The kind that came from years of giving orders that mattered. The kind that got people to move mountains before sunrise. Why are you helping me? I asked softly. He paused, typing slowly, this time his expression distant. Because I once had a daughter. Someone didn't believe her either. Then he turned, walked to the door, and stopped. Before leaving, he signed one word I understood perfectly. Justice. I sat there long after he was gone, my chest aching in ways the painkillers couldn't touch. The monitor beside me beeped steady and mechanical like a countdown. I didn't know what kind of war I'd stepped into, but I knew this: I wasn't alone anymore. Not this time. I picked up my father's dog tags from the bedside table and gripped them tight. For years, I'd worn them like a relic of a man who failed to protect me. Now they felt like a promise. My eyes found the reflection in the window. My face pale, my uniform folded in the corner, the sling cutting across my chest like a scar I hadn't earned yet. "You wanted a war, Marjorie," I whispered. "Then you've got one." Outside, thunder cracked again loud enough to rattle the window pane. It sounded less like a storm and more like a warning shot. The next morning, the world shifted from pain to purpose. I woke to find the chair beside my bed occupied again. Robert sat there immaculate as ever, a tablet balanced on his knee. He'd brought coffee black steaming and somehow exactly the way I liked it. He didn't need to ask how I was. The look in his eyes said he already knew. He handed me the tablet. My stomach tightened when I saw what was on the screen. My stepmother's face filled the local news broadcast. Her voice trembled, expertly rehearsed. "I tried to love her like my own," she said tearfully. But Claire was always volatile. My husband used to worry she'd hurt someone one day. She dabbed at her eyes with a tissue like a grieving widow. When she came back from the army, she wasn't the same. Paranoid, angry. I begged her to get help. I felt my throat close. I wanted to throw the tablet across the room. Robert reached out a steadying hand, hovering near my arm, but never touching. His phone buzzed. He checked it, then handed it to me. A new message glowed on the screen from Major Isabella Ross team, arriving Charleston 1300 hours. Civil, criminal, and PR attached. We'll start with containment. Containment, I muttered. He nodded. They'll neutralize her lies before they spread further. Containment before retaliation. His calmness unnerved me. You're talking like we're planning an operation. He looked at me, then, gray eyes, sharp, unwavering. We are. He typed something else, then turned the screen toward me. You're not the first soldier to come home from a war only to find another one waiting. But this one, we win it clean, publicly. My pulse pounded. And what about her? She shot me. You want me to just wait for the army to issue a statement? His expression didn't change, but his fingers paused on the screen. Then he typed, "You'll have your justice, but first proof." He reached into his pocket and slid my father's revolver sealed in an evidence bag across the table. How did you get that?" I whispered. "Recovered before police arrived," he wrote. "No prints on trigger but hers. Her story falls apart in court." My mind spun. So what now? He stood signaling to the nurse who lingered by the doorway. She nodded respectfully and left without a word. He walked to the blinds, pulling them open. Morning light poured in golden and cold. Now he typed, "We prepare your statement. The official version, not the one she's feeding the press." He handed me a pen and a notepad. My fingers trembled. "You want me to relive it?" "You already survived it," he wrote. "Now we weaponize it." I started writing every word, every scream, every second of that night. By the time I was done, the paper was wet with tears. He read it silently, his face unreadable. Then he took a photo of the pages, sent them somewhere, and turned back to me. "Major Ross will arrive soon. You'll tell her everything. After that, we move to Phase 2. Phase 2, expose her publicly." I stared at him, unsure whether to be terrified or grateful. Probably both. "You sound like you've done this before." His reply came slower this time. "Once. A long time ago. Didn't end well. This time will." He tucked the notebook back into his jacket, gave me one last steady look, then signed something I hadn't seen before, his hands moving with crisp precision. "Trust me, I don't miss my targets." And as he left the room, I realized he wasn't just protecting me. He was hunting her. And Marjorie, for the first time in her life, had no idea someone stronger than her was already drawing a bead on the truth. By the time Major Isabella Ross arrived, the air in my hospital room felt charged like the seconds before a lightning strike. She was small, fierce, and efficient, the kind of woman who made everyone else in the room stand straighter without a word. Her uniform was pressed so sharply it could have cut glass. Robert stood beside her, silent but commanding. When they entered, the nurse instinctively cleared out as if she could sense this wasn't just a patient visit. It was the start of a campaign. Sergeant Mitchell Major Ross began extending her hand. Her voice was calm but layered with quiet intensity. "General Callahan briefed me. You've been through hell. We're here to make sure you don't walk through it alone." "General!" The word slammed into me like a physical blow. I looked at Robert Callahan and saw for the first time the subtle stars glinting on the edge of the identification card clipped inside his jacket. 3 of them. My chest tightened. He saw my realization and gave a barely perceptible nod, his expression softening, almost apologetic. 3 stars, I whispered. "You're a lieutenant general." He typed on his phone and held it up. "On leave. Temporarily. Until this is over." Major Ross smiled slightly. "The general doesn't take leave often," she said. "So when he does, it's usually because someone deserves his attention." She took out a folder thick with documents, laid it across my bed, and began to organize everything with surgical precision. "Your stepmother's story is spreading, but not fast enough to reach the federal level yet. That's where we intervene. We'll start by freezing the narrative. Then we dismantle it piece by piece." She handed me a stack of printed screenshots, Marjorie's social media posts, statements to local reporters, photos of her fake bruises. Each one felt like a knife wound. "She's thorough," I muttered. "She's been planning this." Ross nodded. "Which makes her sloppy. Narcissists always overplay their hand. They crave the spotlight too much to realize it's a trap." The general stepped forward, placed his hand gently on the file, and signed toward her phase 2. "Full exposure." Ross nodded and turned back to me. "We're filing a formal statement to the Charleston PD and to JAG. You'll be under military protection until this is resolved. And we're pulling your mother in for questioning." My stomach dropped. "My mother," I said quietly. "She won't talk. She never does." Ross met my eyes with a steady, piercing gaze. "Then we'll make her." Her confidence was terrifying and comforting at once. She motioned to one of her aides, who set up a laptop and began uploading evidence photos, phone logs, a scan of the revolver. Every click of the keyboard was a drumbeat in the march toward justice. The general stood at the window, watching the world outside with that same calm vigilance. I couldn't help but ask, "Why me? Why are you doing all this?" He turned typed and held up his phone. "Because soldiers fight for each other, even when the war's at home." His words hit something deep in me, something raw and buried. For the first time since the night of the shooting, I didn't feel like a victim. I felt like a soldier again. Hours passed in a blur of paperwork and quiet strategy. When the team finally left, the general stayed behind. The room was quiet, except for the hum of the heart monitor. "You really think this will work?" I asked softly. He didn't type an answer this time. Instead, he opened his notebook and drew a small circle, enclosing it with sharp lines radiating outward a target. He tore out the page, slid it toward me, and tapped the center of the circle. "She's already inside it." The words sent a shiver through me. I stared at the crude sketch, realizing it wasn't just a symbol of strategy, it was a promise. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the shooting in my mind, the sound of the gun, the flash, her face twisting with fury. And underneath it all, my mother's silence. The next morning, I woke to the sound of a message alert. The general had sent me a photo. It was taken through a car window, a suburban house, my mother's. Parked outside was a black sedan with government plates. His message was short. "We talked to her today." My pulse quickened. The battle was about to move from survival to retaliation. For the first time, I wasn't afraid of what came next. I was ready for war. My mother's house looked smaller than I remembered, but the fear it held hadn't shrunk one bit. It was a beige 2-story sitting on a quiet Charleston street, a perfect disguise for everything ugly that had ever happened inside. As the black sedan rolled to a stop, my hands trembled against my lap. The general sat beside me silent, watching the house through the windshield. Major Ross was in the front passenger seat, flipping through her folder. "We keep this clean," she said. "No confrontation. We show her evidence and we make her talk." "You don't know her," I whispered. "She doesn't respond to evidence. She responds to fear." Ross didn't look up. "Then let's give her a reason to be afraid of the right people." The general typed something on his tablet and turned it toward me. "You lead. She needs to see you strong." I wanted to argue, but he was right. This wasn't just about justice. It was about breaking the silence that had built this entire prison. When we stepped out, the air was heavy with humidity. My knees felt weak, but the sight of that door, once my cage, now my battleground, lit something cold and determined inside me. I knocked. The door opened just a few inches. My mother stood there, smaller than I remembered, her hair gray and limp, her eyes darting nervously between us. "Claire." Her voice was a whisper. "Oh, God, they said you, that I tried to kill her," I said flatly. "You know that's not true." She looked at the general, then at Ross, confusion flickering across her face. "Who are these people?" "People who actually believe me," I said. Ross stepped forward, her badge flashing briefly. "Mrs. Mitchell, we'd like a word. This concerns the assault investigation. You can either speak with us here, or we can make it official downtown." My mother's lips trembled. She stepped aside. "Come in." The living room was exactly as I remembered, spotless, airless, suffocating. Not a single picture of me on the walls, only of Marjorie and my father, all framed smiles and lies. The general stayed near the door, scanning the room like a sentry. Ross set down her folder on the coffee table and began to speak. "Mrs. Mitchell, we know your daughter was shot. We also know your stepdaughter called the police immediately afterward and claimed self-defense. What we need from you is clarity." My mother sat down slowly, her hands twisting a tissue into shreds. "I don't know what to say." "Say the truth," I said. "For once." She looked at me, tears gathering in her eyes. "You don't understand Claire. She said she'd ruin us, that we'd lose everything if I ever spoke against her." Ross leaned forward, her tone cool but persuasive. "Mrs. Mitchell, you've already lost everything that mattered, but you can still save your daughter." My mother covered her face with her hands. "I can't," she whispered. "I'm not strong like you." I felt anger rise like bile. "You think I'm strong because of you. I'm strong because you weren't." The words hung between us heavy and sharp. She sobbed, quietly shaking. The general moved then, silent, deliberate. He placed his notebook on the table, flipped to a page, and wrote something. When he slid it toward her, she hesitated before reading. Her breath caught. I leaned over and saw the words, "He will never touch you again. I promise." My mother looked at him confused. "Who are you?" she whispered. He didn't type this time. He reached into his jacket, produced his military ID, and placed it beside the notebook. The silver stars gleamed under the dull lamplight. Her eyes widened, realization dawning. She looked at me, then back at him, then at Ross. "You mean you're here for her?" she asked, voice trembling. Ross nodded once. "We're here for justice." My mother's tears finally broke free. "Then I'll tell you everything." For the first time in 20 years, she spoke the truth. Every blow, every threat, every lie Marjorie had told she laid bare. The general didn't write a word, he just listened, his face unreadable. When my mother finished, her voice was barely audible. "She won't forgive me for this." I reached across the table, my hand shaking but firm. "She won't have the chance." Outside, thunder cracked again, rolling through the humid air. It didn't sound like warning anymore. It sounded like judgment coming home. The storm finally broke as we left the house. Rain came down in sheets, drenching the quiet Charleston street, washing away years of rot that had festered in that home. My mother stood in the doorway, arms wrapped around herself, watching as Ross's team loaded boxes of evidence into the black sedan. For once, she didn't look afraid, just hollow, like someone who'd finally exhaled after decades of holding her breath. The general held an umbrella over me as we walked to the car. Lightning flared, illuminating his face. Calm, unreadable eyes fixed ahead. When we got inside, Ross shut the door and turned toward him. "We've got enough," she said. "Bank transfers, life insurance, falsified tax returns. Marjorie didn't just shoot her. She's been draining her father's estate for years." My stomach twisted. "You mean she stole from him?" Ross nodded grimly. "And from you. Every cent your father meant for you was moved to a shell account in her name 6 months before his death." My pulse pounded. He didn't do that willingly. He was sick. She was his power of attorney. The general typed on his phone and held it up. Then she killed him long before she pulled the trigger on you. The words hit harder than the gunshot. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The car was silent except for the drumming rain. I turned toward the window, watching the blur of headlights reflected in the puddles. I want her arrested, I said quietly. Today. Ross shook her head. Not yet. We make it public first. Her power has always been fear and image. We destroy the image, the fear dies with it. The general nodded, typing another message, phase 3. Exposure. Ross turned back to me. You're the only one who can deliver that. The truth in your voice carries more weight than any document. I looked at them both. You want me to speak publicly? She'll see it. She'll come for me. She already did, Ross said evenly. Now it's your turn. By the next morning, the plan was in motion. The JAG team coordinated with federal prosecutors. Reporters were already circling. My official statement would be broadcast live at 1800 hours. A military facility had been converted into a press staging area. The general's name was nowhere in the paperwork, but his fingerprints were on every detail. Hours crawled by as I rehearsed my words in the mirror. Each sentence felt like a bullet I'd been saving for years. The general watched from the corner of the room, expression unreadable. Occasionally, he signed corrections stronger here. Look up, don't flinch. Finally, he signed ready. I nodded, though my stomach was a storm. When the cameras went live, I stood behind the podium, the seal of the United States Army faint behind me. The room buzzed with low voices and clicking cameras. I could almost feel her watching through a television somewhere, Marjorie probably sipping wine smug, believing she was untouchable. I took a breath. My name is Sergeant Claire Mitchell, I began. 2 weeks ago, I came home to the house my father built. I was met not with family, but with a gun. The room went silent. I continued, voice trembling but steady. For years, my stepmother told me I was broken, dangerous, unstable. She said if I ever spoke up, no one would believe me. She was right until now. Ross gave a subtle nod from the side of the stage. I survived her bullet, I said, my voice rising. But more than that, I survived her control. She may have stolen my inheritance, my peace and my father's legacy, but she doesn't get to steal my truth. Flashes erupted from the cameras. My hands shook, but I didn't stop. To every person who's been silenced by someone who calls it love, who's been told you're crazy for knowing the truth, you're not alone. Justice isn't blind. It just takes courage to see. When I stepped back, applause erupted, not polite, but raw and human. Somewhere in that sound, I felt something release inside me, something that had been buried since childhood. The general met my eyes across the crowd and gave a single nod. Mission complete. But before I could exhale, a commotion erupted at the back of the room. Ross's phone buzzed. She answered, her face darkening. She turned toward me. She's gone, she said quietly. My chest tightened. Gone. What do you mean gone? Marjorie, Ross said. She skipped town. 30 minutes before the broadcast, packed cash, jewelry, and a fake passport. She's on the run. The room spun. My blood went cold. The general's phone buzzed next. He read the message, then slowly lifted his eyes to mine. Let her run, he typed. It's easier to hunt her when she thinks she's free. And for the first time that day, he smiled. Not kindly, strategically. The war wasn't over. It had just gone global. Marjorie didn't vanish quietly. Within 48 hours, her face was everywhere, plastered across news channels, crime blogs, and military bulletins. Armed and dangerous, the headlines read. Suspect in financial fraud and attempted homicide. It should have felt like victory, but it didn't. The hunt had only sharpened the ache inside me. The woman who'd stolen my childhood now haunted every screen. The general's team had set up a temporary command post in a Charleston federal office. Monitors glowed with surveillance feeds, phone triangulations, and transaction pings. It looked less like a police case and more like a war room. Major Ross stood at the front, pacing with the restless precision of a hawk. She's moving east, she said, tapping a red dot on the map. Private charter flight from Raleigh canceled last minute, but her phone pinged near Savannah 2 hours ago. Cash withdrawal, $8,000. She's desperate, not stupid. I stood beside the general, my arm still in a sling, the bandages under my shirt reminding me of what she'd already taken. She won't hide long, I said. She loves being seen too much. Ross smirked. Exactly, she'll slip up. The general typed something on his tablet, the keystroke slow and deliberate. When he turned it toward me, I read, "We let her think she's winning. She'll come to you." A chill slid down my spine. "You want to use me as bait." He met my gaze unflinching. "You're not bait. You're the closer." Ross folded her arms. "We leak a story, something about your testimony being sealed, that the inheritance is being returned to you. She won't be able to resist. She'll reach out, try to control the narrative again." I swallowed hard. "And if she tries to finish what she started," the general wrote one more line, sharp and final, "then she ends it for herself." That night, I couldn't sleep. The plan made sense, but dread gnawed at me. I kept seeing her face, that look of cold satisfaction when she pulled the trigger. The echo of her voice. "You did this to yourself." I gripped my dog tags until the edges bit into my palm. I wasn't that powerless girl anymore. If she came, I'd be ready. 3 days later, the bait worked. The fake story went live on several local sites, claiming that the courts had reinstated my full inheritance and that family reconciliation was underway. Within hours, my old email one she used to monitor when I was younger buzzed with a message from an address I hadn't seen in years. Subject you never learn. My heart slammed against my ribs as I opened it. Body. "You think you won because some old men in uniforms feel sorry for you. You stole my life, Claire. I made you, and I'll unmake you. Meet me one last time. We'll settle this like family." Attached was an address, a marina south of Savannah. Midnight. I read it twice, then looked at the general. He didn't even blink. "We go," he typed. Ross objected immediately. "Sir, it's a setup." He signed back, "Every trap can be reversed." The ride to Georgia was long and silent. The night air outside the convoy felt charged, humming with electricity and inevitability. As we neared the marina, I could smell the salt of the Atlantic, hear the faint moan of the wind through masts. My palms were slick with sweat, but my voice was steady. "She'll be expecting fear," I said. "I'll give her silence instead." The general looked at me, his gray eyes like steel beneath the dashboard light. He signed one phrase that chilled me more than the ocean breeze ever could: "End this clean." No forgiveness, only truth. The rain started again as we rolled to a stop near the docks. Somewhere beyond the darkness, a figure waited beneath a lone floodlight, her reflection trembling on the wet boards. Marjorie. The end game had finally begun. The marina was silent, except for the hiss of rain and the groan of the tide hitting the dock. The floodlight cast everything in hard silver ropes. Metal railings, the slick wood beneath my boots. I saw her before she saw me. Marjorie stood near the end of the pier, her hair plastered to her face, one hand tucked inside her coat pocket. Even soaked through, she radiated that same cruel control, the calm of a predator who believed the trap still belonged to her. The general stayed behind the car, just out of sight. Major Ross and her team lingered in the shadows along the marina fence waiting for the signal. But this moment, this confrontation was mine. I stepped forward, every muscle tight, the bandages beneath my shirt tugging with each breath. Marjorie's eyes flicked up, and for a split second, surprise cracked her mask. Then the smirk returned. "You look good for a corpse," she said, voice smooth despite the storm. "Guess you missed," I said. My voice was steady. It surprised even me. She laughed, a sound that cut through the rain like glass. "You think this ends with your little press show? You think that man, whoever he is, can protect you? He'll walk away when the cameras do. I'm the only one who knows what you really are." I took another step. "You mean what you made me?" Her smile faltered just slightly. "You always had to play the victim. Poor little soldier girl, always blaming me for your weakness." The words hit old wounds, but they didn't cut anymore. I was done bleeding for her. "You taught me how to survive," I said softly. "Unfortunately for you, I learned better than you meant me to." Lightning flashed, illuminating her hand as it slipped from her coat pocket. The gun. My body froze for half a heartbeat. Then I heard a low, distant click. The unmistakable sound of a safety coming off not hers, but someone else's. A voice carried through the rain, calm and firm. "Marjorie Bennett," Major Ross called. "Federal warrant. Drop the weapon." Marjorie's head whipped toward the sound. Her eyes widened, then narrowed as she turned back to me, fury blooming across her face. "You called them here!" "I didn't have to," I said. "You walked right into it." For a heartbeat, the world held its breath. Then she raised the gun. Instinct took over. I dove sideways, the shot cracking through the storm. Pain seared my ribs where the bullet grazed me, but before she could fire again, another sound split the air. One sharp, commanding shot from the shadows. Marjorie's weapon fell first, clattering to the dock. Then she followed, collapsing to her knees, clutching her shoulder. The general stepped into the light, lowering his own gun. His movements were exact, controlled, almost ritual. "Stand down," Ross ordered. Her agents surged forward, cuffing Marjorie as she screamed curses into the rain. I sat up slowly, the ache in my ribs pulsing with every heartbeat. She looked at me soaked, bleeding, her fury collapsing into disbelief. "You think this is justice?" she hissed. I met her gaze without flinching. "No," I said quietly. "This is mercy." The agents pulled her away. The general crouched beside me, his coat shielding me from the rain. He typed something on his phone and held it up. "It's over." I shook my head faintly. "Not yet," I whispered. "Not until everyone knows who she really is." He gave a single nod. Then, for the first time since I'd met him, I saw something soften behind his eyes, a quiet, paternal pride. As they led her away, thunder cracked once more, rolling across the open water like a final verdict. For the first time in my life, the sound didn't make me flinch. The next morning, Charleston was washed clean. The storm had moved out to sea, leaving behind air that smelled like salt and second chances. I stood on the courthouse steps in a borrowed blazer, my sling finally gone, the scar on my shoulder, a dull reminder of everything she'd failed to destroy. Reporters crowded at the bottom of the steps. Microphones raised voices overlapping in a storm of their own. Major Ross stood beside me, calm as stone. "They'll ask you if you forgive her," she murmured. "You don't owe them an answer." I know I said my voice steady, but I have one. When the cameras rolled, I looked directly into the lenses, into the eyes of the country that had watched this unfold like a twisted movie. "Justice isn't revenge," I began. "It's truth with consequences." Flashes burst like lightning, but I didn't blink. My stepmother believed she could rewrite the truth. She thought she could turn pain into profit, cruelty into control. But justice has a way of finding those who build their lives on lies. And when it does, it doesn't knock. It breaks the door down. Behind me, I could see Ross exchange a look with the general, who stood slightly apart. His hands folded behind his back, the stars on his collar catching the morning light. For a moment, I wondered if he saw his own past reflected in mine. The daughter he'd once failed to protect, the voice he'd once lost. "She'll serve her time," I continued, "and I'll move on with mine." But the truth is, this survival isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning of who you become after the silence ends. The crowd erupted with questions, but I stepped back, letting the noise fade behind me. Inside the courthouse, Ross approached me with a folder. "It's done," she said. She pled guilty to fraud, attempted murder, and falsifying financial documents. 30 years. No parole for the first 20. I exhaled slowly. 30 years. The number felt strange on my tongue, too small to balance the scales, too long to waste on hatred. "She'll die in there," Ross said quietly. "They always do." I nodded, then handed her the folder back. "Let her. I have other things to build." Outside, the general was waiting by a black car. He didn't speak, didn't text. He just watched as I walked down the courthouse steps. When I reached him, he handed me a small envelope. Inside was a single photograph taken from a military ceremony years ago. A younger version of him stood beside a teenage girl in uniform, her smile bright, her hand proudly holding a certificate. On the back, written in neat ink, were 3 words. She never stopped. I looked up at him. "Your daughter." He nodded once. He signed gone, 2003, Kabul. My throat tightened. "I'm sorry." He gave the faintest smile. "You remind me of her. That's why I stayed." For a moment, we stood in silence. 2 soldiers separated by generations, but bound by the same war, the one that happens when the enemy shares your last name. He gestured toward the horizon where the clouds were breaking apart. "So, what now, Sergeant?" I slipped the photo into my pocket, feeling its edges settle against the dog tags I still wore. "Now," I said. "Now I do what you taught me. I fight for others who can't." He nodded approval, flickering in his eyes. Then he opened the car door for me. Weeks later, a nonprofit letterhead arrived in the mail, the Homefront Survivors Foundation. My name was printed at the bottom beside his Claire Mitchell co-founder. Our mission to protect victims of domestic and military family abuse through truth training and tactical support. The press called it an unlikely alliance. I called it a beginning. Sometimes when I drive past the ocean at dusk, I still hear the echo of that gunshot, the storm that started it all. But it doesn't haunt me anymore. It reminds me that survival isn't about escaping death. It's about choosing life every single day after it tries to take you. Justice wasn't blind after all. It just needed someone brave enough to make it see. And this time it saw everything.